Why do so many men struggle with loneliness, even when they have friends? This world has taught men to be strong, silent, resilient, all encompassing, and stoic. But what happens when that silence turns into isolation? In this video, I'm breaking down why men keep their friendships surface level and how that ultimately affects our mental health. Let's talk about making stronger connections and why that may very well save your life. Hey everyone, this is Alejandro, a licensed therapist that specializes in working with men's mental health. And today I want to talk to you about a very important topic, loneliness. Specifically, why it's so difficult for men to open up and build meaningful relationships with other men. If you ever felt like you're in a room full of people, but still feel alone, this video is for you. So why do men struggle with connection and friendships? Here are some reasons why men struggle with reaching out. Number one, cultural norms. Now, men are raised to not reach out. They're raised to do things on their own, to be self-reliant, and to also emotionally suppress. So it's not going to necessarily be in our nature to go ahead and start reaching out every time we're not feeling so great inside. Another reason is fear of vulnerability. Now, there is this thing that a lot of us men still carry, especially if your cultural background really highlights this, is this fear of being vulnerable, or in other words, fear of being perceived as weak. If I'm struggling with an emotional hardship right now, I may perceive that as being weak. Maybe because that's how I was raised, that's how I was taught, that's what I saw around me. So oftentimes that fear of appearing weak to another man may be enough reason for me not to reach out or simply to ignore how I'm feeling inside. The reason is super surface level friendships. Sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of men can relate to this, a lot of our friends may be around the context of sports, hobbies, work, and that's it. It doesn't go deeper than maybe what happened at the latest baseball game, football game, basketball game, or the certain hobby, if you're into cars or into etc., things like that. It may not go much more than that. So we're not necessarily have that practice to talk about deeper stuff other than what initially kind of what we have in common. And the last one may be, and this is something that I see so often here on that couch in the therapy office and through myself as well, throughout my journey in evolving and growing. This idea of, it's hard to reach out. It's hard to make those connections. And it's hard to have in-depth connections with a lot of men. Even if they're close friends, even if we experience so much stuff together in life, it's just hard to reach out and make those connections. So what is the price of loneliness? The cost. A lot of mental health consequences, as you can imagine, right? Loneliness in men, it can lead to a lot of mental health complications. It can lead to elevated levels of anxiety, of depression, which is a big deal for men. And of course, even our physical and mental health can be complicated because of loneliness. Loneliness can be a cycle, and it could be a pattern, and it can be difficult to break out of that pattern. With that comes the obvious isolation. When we learn to isolate, it's a hard pattern to break out of. I mean, if you can imagine how many older men in your life, if you can just visualize them, do you see them alone? Or that maybe feel alone? Everyone has this image of some older man in their life that you can just tell is alone or feels isolated. It's a pattern that we gotta break. And of course, the biggest cost is the effects it has on your relationships, on your spouse, your partner, your children, your friends, coworkers. You start to feel disconnected when you are lonely. It's just what happens. So when you start seeing that and then you realize, hey, these connections that I have with the people I love most are not as strong, or they don't feel as connected, that begins to weigh on us inside. And then comes in the mental health complications that I mentioned a second ago. So what do we do about loneliness? We strive for deeper connections. Why? Because deeper connections are protective factors for us men. How are they protective factors? Well, vulnerability. When you are making deeper connections, you have to be vulnerable. There's no way you can have a strong, deep connection with someone if you're not vulnerable. Now, this can be scary, fellas. Yes, it was scary for me as well. Believe me, it's not an easy thing to do or to build up to. But when we are able to be vulnerable and we have these reciprocal relationships with other men, it gives us shields. It gives us shields. It helps us feel safe. It helps us relieve burdens. It helps us relieve pressure and stress. Believe it or not, when you feel safe in a meaningful connection with someone, you're able to unburden yourself from a lot of these stressors that men innately carry inside. That is a huge protective factor from stress, anxiety, depression. Yes, we suffer from all of those, fellas. We sure do. When we're able to make our surface level connections go deeper by using vulnerability, we are arming ourselves with tools, shields, freaking everything around us to protect ourselves from life's distress. Men with close relationships, they live longer, folks. We have less medical and we have less health complications because we feel safe, we feel protected, we feel valued, and we feel seen. So how do we build deeper connections? We gotta be intentional about this. It's not gonna happen on its own. It's not gonna just come out of organically like this. No, we actually have to put mindful effort into it. We gotta be intentional. We gotta make the phone calls. We gotta send the text. We gotta create opportunities where this can actually happen. We gotta be intentional. I was even talking to some of my clients, making a list of the men in your life that you wanna connect with. Who are they? Start literally making a list. This person, this person, this person, and make a schedule. I'm going to reach out to this person on this day, this person on that day, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we have to be intentional about this. And number two, we got to share our own struggles. Oftentimes, when you're with your friend and you want to have a deeper connection with him, yeah, it means being vulnerable and maybe sharing something that you are personally struggling with. Sometimes that's the easier way to kind of break the ice of vulnerability. You lead through example, and we hope that our friend can reciprocate back to us. And if they can't, it's not necessarily about our own struggle. It's maybe that's where they are in their life right now. But we're going to try it. We're going to lead by example and see if that works. And we're going to create some spaces for this. So, hey, I'm all for meeting up to the gym, meeting up to go play some sporting event, I'm going to a bar, all that great stuff is all fun. But when you are there, make the space to be intentional about being vulnerable and sharing something more than just what you would talk about at a sporting event. So maybe it's over a cup of coffee instead of maybe a sporting event. If it's a sporting event, that's great, but go back to the first step and be intentional about what you're going to talk and share about at the sporting event. Now, granted, not all contexts are going to facilitate a deeper, meaningful conversation. So it's on us to create that space to be able to have a vulnerable conversation. Going out for coffee is great for that. And of course, keeping it consistent. True emotional vulnerability means that we got to keep doing this. We got to keep showing up. We can't just do it one time and expect for our relationship now to be at a deeper level. It's got to be consistent, folks. Fellas, we got to keep at this. It's a newer muscle that we got to train and grow. And these are some of the techniques to do that. We got to be consistent. Fellas and men, we're not meant to live this life alone. We need meaningful, deeper relationships in our life. Hanging out with our friends is fun, but we're not meant to just have superficial relationships, surface level. No, push that further. Challenge yourself to have deeper relationships with your friends, with the other men in your life. We need each other. Folks, it's up to us to do this. No one's going to do this for us. We have to be the ones doing this for each other. Challenge yourself. Reach out to your friend and start that process of being vulnerable and making deeper, meaningful connections with them. I guarantee you that they need it. I see this every day on that couch in therapy. Men need their friends to talk to them about difficult stuff. We need each other. If you enjoyed this video, if this message resonated with you, share it to a friend. Share it to someone who you think may need this to hear this right now. And of course, do that whole YouTube thing, right? Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Thanks for watching, everyone. Again, I'm Alejandro, a licensed therapist. Hope to see you at the next video.